Joining me now is Head of Advocacy from Women's Forum Australia, Stephanie Bastiaan. Stephanie, thank you for your time. Now, we've seen some shocking revelations in The Australian today about how our court system is still relying on outdated information when approving access to permanent treatments, including irreversible surgeries, hormone treatments, puberty blockers. Barrister Belle Lane, a leading Australian legal professor on gender dysphoria cases, has written a paper calling on the courts to look at the processes being adopted by many Scandinavian countries where puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones are becoming now a last resort. Australia still, Steph, following this affirmation model blindly. We're one of the last places that's doing that, despite all the evidence that's come out in the UK, Scandinavian countries, number of US states showing that this can be a really harmful path for many confused kids.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, Rita. Thanks for having me on tonight. Yeah, it's very concerning. The government seems to have its head in the sand. We know the findings of the Cass report do impact Australia, yet our political leaders, and I think captured by powerful lobbyist groups like ACON, are continuing to deny that this is having a big impact on particularly children. And we know that girls are disproportionately affected, particularly girls in schools. There's a social contagion element, there's a mental health component to it. And these girls are going through changes that they cannot reverse, they cannot fix. And the fact that they will not review, the fact that they were refusing to look into it, I think shows that we're on track for a thalidomide scandal 2.0.
That would be shocking, but I think you're absolutely right, because any child who undergoes a treatment that's irreversible, that leaves them with lifelong medical complications, and they were allowed to go down that path despite all the evidence that's come to light in recent years, to my mind, they've got a very good case for compensation.
Absolutely, and I think another area that's impacting this are our conversion therapy laws. Now, a couple of weeks ago, South Australia just passed their set of laws, but these conversion therapy laws essentially legislate the affirmation model only. It criminalises parents who pursue a more holistic approach. It puts medical professionals at risk of being accused of performing conversion practices on kids.
It's such a dishonest term for those laws to call it conversion therapy.
Oh, correct.
So dishonest, because you do have parents who say, I want my child to see a psychiatrist, try to work through these issues before there's any sort of drugs involved or medical procedures, and that is something that's really not allowed under that, and parents could risk losing their children if it goes to the courts. There was a well-known case where that's already happened.
Yeah, and I think there's probably more. We've certainly sent off FOIs to find out how widespread the problem is in various states. But we know that these laws are affecting child protection cases and things like that, because the laws are so strict, and it gives the state the power to try to enforce them in this way. It gives medical clinics powers to report parents who are perhaps concerned about these processes. Really, it is absolutely urgent that we have an inquiry as soon as possible, because the longer we take, the more damage that's going to be done and the bigger the scandal is going to be.
Absolutely. Now to a lawsuit that should serve as a warning to both public organisations and the private sector, because both of them are pushing trans activism onto their staff. A school board in Virginia has been forced to pay $575,000 US in a settlement to a teacher because they were fired for refusing to use the preferred pronouns of a transgender student. I think, again, this is the wheels are turning, things are changing, and there is now a correction happening where people are going, you're not going to coerce me, you're not going to bully me into affirming someone else's delusion. If they want to pretend, or if they believe they're this or that, good for them, but I shouldn't have to participate in that.
Absolutely, and that's why these cases are so important. Cases like Sal Grover's and Jasmine Sussex, it's these cases where you test the law and hopefully bring about change. And even if there's a finding that is really wrongful and unfair, at least then it sort of pushes the conversation further to say perhaps we need to look at repeals and reforms So hopefully, but I am concerned because Victoria's obviously bringing in these vilification laws. So I think that that's just, Harriet Shing is an activist. I think that they're going to be problematic and being another weapon to be used to silence discussions around women's sex-based rights and treatments for gender dysphoria. So I hope there's some pushback on that. But once again, these cases, they'll come up and...
It would be helpful if we had an opposition in this state that it sometimes opposed some of this madness.
I know.
They have been missing, and I think that's where the real debate happens. And we saw that with The Voice and where the majority opinion prevailed. And I think the majority opinion, even here in Victoria, is very clearly on one side, but we've got both Labor and the Liberals on the other side. So people really don't have a choice when they go to cast their vote. Before you go, there's some data from advocacy group Do No Harm. It's made up of medical professionals, and they've released a database of over 2,000 US hospitals that have performed sex change treatments on minors. So we're talking about under 18 here. This comes after the same group revealed that over 5,700 American children underwent sex change surgeries between 2019 and 2023. They claim these figures represent thousands of kids who are being treated like guinea pigs for unproven and sometimes dangerous medical experiments. And that's another thing that's not talked about. I don't think it's at the heart of this issue. I think it is an ideological issue, but a lot of people do point out that there's plenty of money to be made from this sector. And once you perform a surgery like this or go down the drugs path, you can create a lifelong medical patient because they need that ongoing care. And often there's all sorts of complications. Absolutely,
and that's what makes it so devastating. But I mean, in Victoria, in Australia, we don't even have the statistics. They are not keeping track records. If a child or a young adult has a double mastectomy, we don't know whether it's for breast cancer or for gender dysphoria. So there's some really good work being done in the US. We certainly need more medical professionals who have this knowledge to be maybe doing something similar here. I think it's really important. We need this data.
Yeah, we need the data. We do not have that. Stephanie Bastiaan, thank you for your time and